Good morning, folks. Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And some of you will be listening online on the recording, so welcome to you as well. Our webinar today is about JD Edwards security, particularly how to do it the quick way, really about reducing the cost of implementing a security model in JD Edwards, but more particularly making sure that it is also best practice, that it is tight. So it's quality and cost. So if you haven't been on a webinar before, I find it hard to believe that none of you had, but you do have a question box on the right-hand side. If you got anything to ask, please key it in and let me know, and we'll try and pick those up as we go along. If we don't, we'll pick them up afterwards. I'll get mailed with those questions. The webinar is being recorded, so you will be sent a link to the recording immediately after the session. If you want a copy of the slides, just let me know. You can reply to a reminder that you will have just received, or my email address is on the last slide. But my name is Mike Ward. Those of you who don't know me, I'm the Chief Executive of Q Software, and we also have Trace Paul on here, who is our Technical Director, so he will talk to you later. But we really don't want to take more than 20-25 minutes of your time today to bring this subject up and really just kick it off. We expect that this will stimulate issues in your mind, and perhaps you'll want to talk to us about it in more detail. But I want to keep this brief today, as I said. So what are our objectives? Well, I think the core issue is that people look at security in JD Edwards and go, it's complex. Yeah, I'd like to fix those issues, but it's too complicated. Perhaps they're doing an upgrade, perhaps it's a rollout, and security always gets deprioritized, left out of the project, and then you've got problems. And what we're going to show you is the ways that you can incorporate security into a rollout, into an upgrade, re-implementation, etc., and not risk the project timescales or the costs. It's also about going all doors closed. Certainly in years gone by, that was a big issue, that people were stuck all doors open on JD Edwards, but it's fairly rare now. But I do know customers are in that situation. So really what we're looking at is being able to implement all doors closed extremely easily. And the third issue is really about best practice. Creating a role-based structure that is based on our experience of having done this for 25 years. And I think we will itemize clearly to you where that fits, i.e. when the standard roles will fit within your requirements and what else you need to do, because there is no nirvana here. It's not 100 percentile, but as long as you clearly understand where you need to apply changes of work, I think that is a working methodology. And I will touch, but not spend too much time on today, is how to get from beyond the basic role-based security to other areas like segregation of duties. And really what we're showing you where is the start of a path to introduce these other areas: audit controls, SOD controls, and user provisioning. So that's our subject matter today. I hope most of you on this call, or all of you on this call, don't need to be introduced to Q Software. We've been doing this now for 24 years, so we do know a little bit about this subject, and we've brought all this to bear in bringing up what is a different way of doing security. Most of you will be aware that we've had these integrated tools for JD Edwards, particularly Security Manager Pro, before that E1 config for many years in the E1 environment. But what we're introducing now is something considerably different, and what we're calling it is the quick way. The first step of that is a product called QuickRoles. What this enables you to do is to understand what modules you're running on your system, and Trace will show you briefly this in a few screenshots in a moment. But what having signed on and gained a license for the QuickRoles product, it then runs a module check on your system and checks to see which modules you're using on that JD Edwards environment, and then suggests a list of roles. It pulls down roles that are relevant for the jobs that we'd expect you to have within your organization. You can then select, deselect, you can select other modules which you haven't installed yet, etc. And it pulls those roles down onto your JD Edwards system, and then you deploy. You hit a button and it writes that. What we're trying to do here is really to create an environment whereby we can automate the security build. If you're starting from scratch, this is extremely easy, and really it's a matter of taking these pre-built roles, which have been SOD checked according to our view of SOD in a standard JD Edwards environment. But we need to be slightly careful here, and I think we need to fully explain these two issues in the morning, in the middle here, in the morning, what's going on in my mouth today, which is tailoring and testing. What do we mean by this? Having got the roles, the question is that you've got to tailor them to your business, and there are three particular areas. One is if you have any data security, different divisions, different countries, etc. You will still need to apply row security. We can give you documentation and training, etc. on that, but we can't guess that in advance. And that could take a little bit of time. Just bearing in mind that if you have a purchase order clerk for US and Canada, two different divisions, we recommend one functional role and a data role to separate the data, keeping this under control, minimizing the number of roles and therefore minimizing the management. Secondly, if you've got any versioning on any of the JD Edwards programs, you need to look at that. I know people go very heavily into versioning, creating objects which in one instance doesn't update data, and another instance that does. That is a dangerous thing to do in my mind, but people do it. And we can't second guess that either. So you need to look at your versioning if you're using it. And thirdly, whether you've got any modifications, any customizations, any code of your own in the JD Edwards environment, you need to develop those roles separately. So that could take some hours, some days, depending on the flexibility and the tailoring that you need to do. If you have no data security versions and the modifications, obviously there's zero work there. But the thing you will always have to do is test. You do not implement a new security model without testing it. You should never, ever, ever do that. But this is where we say that if you're doing an upgrade project, a rollout, it's a good thing to do to implement the roles, the new roles, as part of the testing. Perhaps you do it as part of the classroom testing, and then the user acceptance testing, using the standard roles that you're going to go live with. Building those roles, if you've got no tailoring, it's less than a day's work. So it makes sense to use them in that rollout. But you have to test. And below that, I'll talk about in a moment, there are optional SOD rules which you can employ in this. So really what you do next in the deployment is you write this to the 950. We do have a tool called Security Manager Pro, most of you will be aware of. But if you believe that the componentization in Security Manager Pro is too complex for you, what we're now enabling you to do from QuickRoles is write directly to the 950. All right? And this process of QuickRoles generation should take you under 4 hours. All right? And just to show you in a moment how simple that is. The second thing he's going to show you is a new tool we have developed called QuickSecure, which works over the top of the 950. Right? This is not using our staging tables approach. This is working directly over the JD Edwards tables. Right? And what it is doing is aimed to simplify the management process. You're getting away from using the P00950 Workbench and doing things in a grid so that you've got both visibility and update is much, much easier. What we do know is the security workbenches are very standard. Security workbench is very inefficient. It's a very difficult tool set to use. I think it's something that most CNCs who do security all the while have got used to. But what we're aiming to do here is to de-skill things and make it easier, so that What QuickSecure is enabling you to do is to manage your security in a grid. Trace will show you that in a moment. But there are some special tools in there that we've developed in other areas and brought into this tool to enable you to look at the net effect. What is the effect of multiple layers of security, i.e. multiple roles, etc. An audit trail, which you can switch on, switch off. Your auditor would always like to see what changes have been made. And a very useful backup and restore method, which I think people are finding to be very useful. Then there's a bunch of role operations, batch imports, batch assignments, and dealing with things like role sequencing, etc. But rather than me keep on wittering on, show these good people how they go about it, and show them these two tools. So let me hand over to Trace Paul.
Yep, 1 second here. All right, can you see my screen?
Not yet. Oh, here it comes. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that. So thanks very much, Mike. So what I'm showing you on the screen first is when you get yourself set up with the QuickRoles, you'll download as part of the process a Java application, and we'll give you a login and password. And this is what will allow you to connect to our Q Cloud, and this is what will allow you to download these QuickRoles. And you can choose which ones you want to install. So once you've logged in, our process, it's going to prompt you to select a database, and it's going to ask you kind of which method you want to use. For today's demo, we're showing you how to do the direct to the F00950 method. So it just gives you a few kind of things to mark before you actually then have a look at your system. And what we'll do at that point then is we'll run a scan over what you're currently using in JD Edwards. If you're an existing, if you're an existing installation, you've got users already in doing transactions, it'll actually look at where they're transacting to determine which roles you might want to install. So once it does that scan, it'll also see if you've got any roles that might have similar names to what we've named our roles. Most likely you won't, because we worked pretty hard to make sure that we didn't kind of give them a naming convention that was kind of too generic. They're process-based roles, and once it runs through that scan, it not only shows you kind of what you might be using existing, but it'll mark those for you automatically, and then you can go through if you want to and say, no, I'll just take all of them, or I'll unmark some of them if you know people aren't using them. But you come in, you select the roles that you want us to build, and this is not only creating the role IDs in JD Edwards, it's also bringing with it the security. And you'll choose here which environment you want these roles to be assigned to. So typically we would have you choose a non-prod environment. So whether you're testing in your development environment or your PY environment, you can select that here so that when it creates the role ID in JD Edwards, it also attaches that environment to that role. So once you've done that process, I'm gonna end this piece here. And the next thing you're going to do is you're going to log into JD Edwards. And once you've installed our software, the QuickRoles comes installed with our software, and it's totally integrated with JD Edwards. And so QuickSecure is the tool that Mike was talking about there at the end. And that's the alternative to using standard security Workbench. And what this does is it allows you to more easily, do routine security and make changes to it. So after you've loaded our QuickRoles, you can come in here and start working with them immediately and start making changes to them directly in the F00950. So if I click on standard, this is going to pull up what looks like security Workbench, but it actually functions a little bit differently in that it's a lot easier to work with. So at first glance, it'll look the same, but as soon as you start clicking on either roles or you want to add or do anything with standard security, you'll notice here it's a lot different. So for example, if I want to just add standard security, I can come in here And immediately I've got the ability to add multiple types of standard security. Anything that you would typically do in JD Edwards, you're going to be able to do through Q software. Here I can add multiple types of security at the same time. So if I double click or click on that button there, you'll notice here I get a grid, and I can just start typing in the applications that I want to secure into the grid here pretty easily. And I have the ability to kind of predefine these parameters that I want it to automatically populate here, so I'm not having to type those in every time. I'm not having to drag, drop items in here to kind of get them into the screen. I can also select to create my security for multiple profiles, or for the roles that you've just created using QuickRoles, you can pull that information in here and start working with it as well. And I'm going to show you an example of that here in just a second. I can also find any of the associated applications that need to be secured with the applications I'm adding security for. So for example, here in this business unit master, there are associated apps. So all I have to do is highlight that row and go to row associated apps, and I can pull in any of the associated applications here if I want to. I just mark them, I click row and secure, and it will pull them into the grid for me. As you can see here, it's added them now to the items that I'm going to secure. And once I save this, depending on the profile that I'm going to add these records to, it'll update the F00950. And we've got a couple of different methods here that you can do that, or that you can choose on how you want to update the 950, but it's direct and it's immediate. The other thing is like I said, with the existing security that's in there, and this is an example of one of the roles that comes in QuickRoles, AB01 master. If I want to look at that single record, I can go row single object, or if I want to pull it all in and look at all of the type 1 security for AB master, I've got it all here in the grid, and now I can start making my modifications. So as Mike had suggested before, if you need to add custom objects, if you need to add data security, you can do all that, again, by either adding additional security, or if you're working like here with the action security, you can just start typing in, if you had a P550102 or something like that, you'd be able to pull it in here. And again, it's going to see any of your standard or custom applications. So it's going to function just like JD Edwards wrote the program. Let's see. The other things we wanted to show you in here is not only how easy this is to use, but also that there's some other really great utilities in here for your security administrator to use that make this really powerful. From the form menu, I can do a backup or restore of my entire 950, and then I can selectively restore things back. So if I want to create a backup of it, I just click on this, and it very quickly makes a snapshot of my entire F00950. Then if I want to restore anything, you'll notice here I can pick whichever backup I've created, and then I can, for example, I'll pick that first one, and then I can come into row and decide if I want to look at the details in that. I can look at restoring all the records, restoring specific items, or like if I click on restore by profile, I can start picking exactly what type of security I want to restore, and I can select if I want it to be for multiple profiles or just a single profile, and then I can restore. And it'll tell you exactly how many records it restored. So this is a really powerful tool. It makes making backups and restoring things a lot easier. You don't have to go to your DBA. It doesn't, again, this is in seconds, not waiting hours to, based on requests that you have to put into your IT group. So let's look at some of the other things on the row menu here that make this tool, again, more powerful than kind of standard tools. So if I go back out to kind of that main workbench area and I'm on the form menu, you also have the ability to see the history of all the changes that have been made. So as you start working with your security, it's going to capture everything that was done in there, who did it, and exactly what changed. So you've got that utility also built in here as well. And then you've also got some role operations that come kind of packaged together here. So these are some common things that you would typically do as a CNC administrator. So you can do kind of role maintenance, whether you want to add roles by manually or modify the environments that are assigned to roles. You can do all those things in here. You can do some batch import if you need to batch import tons of roles for other types of projects where you're building them from scratch and you want to just upload, the names so that you don't have to create them from scratch. Same with users. You also can do some bulk assignments. So bulk assigning roles to users or vice versa, bulk assigning roles to or users to roles. So these just kind of are nice, kind of very quick action utilities that make typical CNC work much easier to do. And then the last thing I'll show you is called NetEffect. And this is a really great troubleshooting tool. So as you're going through and testing your security, as your users report back to you that they can or can't access something and they have multiple roles assigned to them, you can use this NetEffect tool to determine what's allowing them to access something or not access something. So for example, if I wanted to look at a single user or multiple users, I just put their user ID in here. So I'll just put a test user I've got on this system. Oops, sorry, hold on one second. And I put in the application that I'm, or the UBE or the form that I'm looking at. So P01012, let's just do address book, the environment, and my live security. And if I do a find, oops, I don't have that user on here. Bear with me just a second. What I'll do is I'll do it for multiple users so I don't have to figure out which users I've got there. But let me go NetEffect, and we'll do multiple users, and that way it'll just pull up all users. I'm going to pull up, again, P01012, and if I do a find on that, it's going to show me all the users that have access to address book or based on the criteria I put up here. So if I'm looking for all users that can run, and maybe I'm looking for all users that can also delete, then it's going to pull in everybody that has at least run and at least delete. So, and then at that point, if I want to find out why they have it, it's telling me here over on the right side, the role, or like in this case, public gives this one user access. But what we'll do is to run it. But what we'll do is we'll take a look at like one in particular. So if I highlight it, and I want to look kind of more closely at the details, it'll break it down for me and show me, at the public level, we've given default access for, everybody to run this in our test environment. But at the role level, this user is assigned to this role. And so that's because they don't have any user level security to override the role security. That's really the net access, and that's the reason why they have it. It'll tell you whether it's explicit, implicit, and it'll also tell you, even if they have multiple roles, whether more than one role is granting them this access. So if one role gives them run and one role gives them action security, you'll see all those details here. So this will save you a lot of time in terms of trying to determine how you want to make changes to roles, especially when you have users with multiple roles. That's a real kind of quick and dirty look at QuickRoles and QuickSecure. But again, all of this just makes using and doing typical security work and creating those roles from scratch. This is going to speed up that process by a lot. And so I'll pass it back to Mike.
Thank you very much, Trace. Couple of questions here. What versions of JD Edwards are we covering here?
Yeah, so this works with everything that's 9.0 and higher. We'll have to go back and see, because depending on when roles were introduced, post XE, we'll have to kind of look. But we always say 9.0 and higher. There may be some of the late service or tools releases for 8.12 that this would be compatible with as well.
But certainly 9.0 onwards. Thank you,
yes,
Trey.
For sure.
So if you've got any other questions, folks, just key them in. I'm moving swiftly to this slide because there is a question about segregation of duties. So let's talk about that before we wrap it up today. As we said, QuickRoles will generate and deploy these roles for you. Hit the button and it will write it to the 950. Use QuickSecure to manage that security. If you want segregation of duties, what you can then do is implement our Audit Manager module. And QuickRoles will give you a set of segregation of duties rules to sit alongside it. There is no specific link there between the 950 and the segregation of duties rules live in your system. I'll talk about that on the next slide. But yes, you can implement Audit Manager, and that will give you segregation of duties controls. It will also give you reporting for the auditors, etc., and enable you to manage your risks. But the next step for some of our users, and certainly not all of them, is to look then at implementing Security Manager Pro instead of the QuickSecure approach. That then gives you the ability to do things like proactive SOD, i.e. when you allocate a role to a user to check whether that security would commit any SOD rule violations. So you can check against your SOD rules, but that needs Security Manager Pro. And probably for most users, they won't be going that way. The final piece being that you can then go on and implement the rest of our integrated tool set. All of these tools integrate in with JD Edwards, the user provisioning to enable you to control the way the users request access and approval is given. We've got reporting now with Reports Now, as well as the Hubble reporting. Periodic review, the process user certification process that you go through with your users. Most of you will be doing that annually or quarterly, so you get used to sign off access, management within users to sign off access, and creating workflow around that, simplifying that process, making it more meaningful. And then the monitoring process of monitoring access to access you don't want to have now to be alerted if somebody accesses part of the JD Edwards system that you don't want them to. The final thing I'm going to mention is our QCloud system. This is there as a service for our customers to enable them to run snapshots against their security. And some of our users use this instead of our on-prem tools to run segregation of duties tracks and look at fraud control, satisfy their auditors, etc. But the main issue is looking at how you can use QCloud here to understand your existing security and plan your remediation, perhaps then roll out QuickRoles, etc. And we also have a licensing part of that to check your Oracle licensing. And we are just about to introduce data privacy as well. So that, I think, is about all we've got time for. Let's have a quick look at questions. Yes, somebody is asking here about licensing costs. For a 100 user license for QuickSecure on a small JD Edwards system, you're looking at $3,000. It's a very affordable solution. So that's really not a big issue. SOD, yes, I've covered that, hopefully. Any other questions, just key them in, or you can come back to me afterwards. My email address is on the next slide, or you can reply to the reminder you got earlier on. So that's about all we've got time for today. What we've shown you, hopefully, is how to look at incorporating security into your rollouts, how to get over your orders open problem potentially, but it's really about building a role-based security very easily. If you haven't got to tailor for row security, versioning, and any customizations, you can build your roles in less than a day, all right, and write them to the 950. Very, very simple, no staging tables, etc. But what Trace has also shown you is a very easy way and a much better way of managing security in that 950. These tools are on general release and available now, and you can then go in and lead into the rest of what we call the security lifecycle, i.e. segregation of duties and other internal controls. It's all about saving you time and saving you money, but the other side of the coin is to implement greater controls, i.e. stopping fraud, making sure your security is tight and manageable going forward. But that's our webinar for today. I think we've got one final slide. That's my email address. If you've got any other questions, just reach out to me. I'd love to hear from you, hear whether this session was useful. Please let me know, and we'll get straight back to you. But that's all we've got time for. So I'd like to say thank you to you for attending. You will get a copy of the slides mailed to you, but if you've got any other questions, just let me know. Thank you, Trace. Thanks, folks, for your time. All the best.